So I have a special guest tonight. It is Principal Dwight Davis. He is the principal of Brown Education Campus here in the District of Columbia. It's a public school that has students from pre-K 3. So we have 3-year-olds all the way up to 8th grade, 13. Our focus tonight is on children, the effect of domestic violence trauma on them, and how domestic violence shows up in the classroom. So I thought he'd be a great expert for that. And just a little bit more background. He became a principal at Brown in 2017 after being in the school system for 15 years. He has done most of his teaching in almost all of his teaching and principaling in urban schools. He's a product of DC Public Schools. He served as the Mary Jane Patterson Fellow at Whittier Education Campus, and he's held the role of assistant principal and teacher within DCPS at various campuses. His approach to families and communities involves letting families know that they are an important ingredient in their child's success. He received his bachelor's degree in elementary education from Albright College in Pennsylvania, and his master's of divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary. And most importantly for me, he's my groom. So he is thankfully going to be with us tonight. He's going to answer any questions that you all have. I know we have a couple of people in the class that are thinking about education as a possible career option, so he's open to those questions too. But our focus tonight will be on children and trauma, and how teachers and principals deal with that trauma within the classroom. So I think he's ready. Let me just double check. So with that, I'll let Mr. Davis take it away.
Greetings, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to the Davis household. You see the chaos in action? That's how it goes around here with 4 boys, 25 to 5. So that's how we get down. It's great to see so many smiling faces. If you can, please turn on your camera. That's a very important part of this whole virtual experience. We get to see everybody. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, I am a teacher at heart, although I am a principal. So I really believe in the learning experience is relational for me. So in order to really learn, you have to be willing to connect with people that you don't normally connect with, because everybody has a different perspective, and we can learn from different perspectives, no matter how diverse they are. So I just ask that you please open yourself up to this experience. Okay. Thank you, Professor Davis, for the wonderful introduction, and we're going to have some fun. All right. So here's what we're going to do, people. It's basically 3 moves we're going to make tonight. The first move is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about brain science, how the brain works, how the brain responds to stress, what is stress, and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to talk about how stress shows up in the classroom. And I think this is the point where you're going to make a lot of connections to the reading about that was assigned to you. You may make connections to life experiences that you've had in the past. I'm going to be, 100% transparent and say that some of the things that we talk about today may trigger you, may bring back memories. And I want you to be aware of that, because oftentimes when we sit in front of children, our presence, just by virtue of me being 6'6" and 250 pounds, I trigger people for a lot of different reasons. And for some of my students, for some of my educators in the building, I can trigger them as well in positive ways and negative ways. And I want you to be aware of that. The last move we're going to make during this presentation is I'm going to talk to you about how, whether you choose to pursue law, whether you choose to pursue education, finance, no matter what you do, the different ways in which you can buffer or create an environment where people feel comfortable to be themselves. Okay, that's a lot. I was told I have like 45 minutes. Now, the last thing I'm gonna say before we move on to the next slide to our first activity is, um, a part of my teaching philosophy is that the best way to learn is to ask great questions, right? So if you want to get something out of this experience, right, because you all are paying thousands of dollars for this class, right, you all need to ask questions. I'm going to ask Professor Davis to monitor the chat for any questions, but please, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Ask away. That's why I'm here. All right. We good? Can I get a thumbs up? We good? We good? We good? We good? Ah, there we go. Let's go. All right. So at the end of this session, can I get somebody to read that for me? Anybody?
Sure, I'll read it.
Okay, thank you.
Participants will leave today's session with a more robust understanding of stress, how it shows up in schools, and how educators work to buffer the negative impact of stress.
There you go. Thank you so much. And I like Orlando gave me the thumbs up on the screen. That was pretty cool. Okay. All right. All right. So here we go. We got a team builder. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to be broken into, what did we say, Professor Davis?
10 rooms.
Yep, 10 rooms. I think each room is going to have 3 people and one room is going to have 2 people. Get ready. So this structure is called cooperative learning structure. And so the impetus behind this structure is that you have to give children, individuals, opportunities to learn from one another, right? Because in interacting with people who are different from you, you learn different skills. You learn to appreciate different types of people. This is something that I implement all the time at school, right? This may feel uncomfortable for you because, you know, we're virtual one, and then the other piece is like, you may not like talking to people who you don't really know that well. But guess what? This is a life skill that you all need to learn, right? And so this is how you also help individuals overcome some of the stressful situations that they've gone through. So here's what we're going to do. This is called a team builder. So the object of this is to get you all to connect to one another so that we can dive deep into some very difficult content. Okay. The name of this is Regrets I Have. Okay, let me make sure. Regrets I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Regrets I've had a few. Now, everybody has experienced a situation where someone has done something wrong to them or they've done something wrong to somebody else, right? And if you have a sibling, you probably have a time when you have treated your sibling in a way that you probably should not have, right? So here's what we're going to do. I want to get you in the mindset of a you know, elementary, middle school, high school scholar. What is one thing that you have regretted saying or doing to a child during a behavior issue? So for example, let's say, you know, you saw, you know, your brother or sister is doing something, your mom said, don't do that. Your brother or sister continue to do it and you just went off, right? And you feel bad about that. Or what is one thing that you remember a teacher saying or doing to you during a behavior issue that teacher should have regretted, all right? So that's the question. What's one thing that you've done that you, when you look back on it, you say, oh man, I shouldn't have done that because it has these implications? Or what is that experience that you remember from elementary school that you still remember that teacher said that to you and it still makes you upset when you think about it, all right? You're gonna go into the room. Everybody's gonna have 30 seconds to think. And then I need, in each group, establish a timekeeper and each person has 1 minute to share. So for example, so I'm looking at my screen, I see Miss Topping, I see Professor Davis, and I see my man Orlando. So when we get into the room, Orlando will go for a minute. Everybody will say, thank you for sharing. Then Ms. Topping will go for a minute. Everybody will say, thank you for sharing. And then Professor Davis will go for a minute and everybody will say, thank you for sharing. And then everybody will come back and I'll ask somebody to share out. All right. You're going to have about 5 minutes for this activity. Are there any questions before we go? Oh, I see a hand up. Yes, ma'am. Tell me, say your name.
Rachana.
Hey, Rachana.
Hi. I'm sorry. Are we just answering either or, like one or two?
Yes, either one or two. Thank you for the clarifying question. That's such a great question. There you go. If I had a sticker, I'll put it right on there. Okay. Y'all ready? Y'all got it? Okay. You got it, Professor Davis? We good? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to create the rooms.
Okay.
Hey, Professor Davis.
Hi, I guess we're in a room together.
Okay, great. I'm
That's
also in
cool.
room 7.
Huh?
Also in room 7. I have like my voice here
Oh,
and then my face in room 7.
oh, I'll move you to, what room are we in now?
Uh,
I'm gonna move you to room 9.
okay, and my face is still in room 7, and there's only 3 of us.
I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna move your
All right.
face to room 9, I think. Oh, hold on. Did that work? Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay, party people, some people are returning. All right, while we're waiting for, let me see, how many people do we have here so far? We only have 9. Okay, let me ask Professor Davis to bring us back. Welcome back, everybody. Yeah. I'm getting Professor Davis to close up these rooms so we can all get back. Otherwise, we're gonna be here at like 9 o'clock tonight. I know y'all don't want that. Okay. All right. So as more participants come back, there she is. Okay. Would anyone like? Oh well, no. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now, Callie and Catherine, they kind of, they're gonna get an A++ on this one because we kind of previewed this quote. The past is always present, whether we acknowledge its profound reality or not. I'll say it again, the past is always present. So why do you all think I included this quote after that activity? Please, if you can raise your hand to be acknowledged, that would be great. Okay, there we go. All right, I see 2. Okay. I think the first hand I saw, I'm not good with Zoom, y'all. I use Microsoft Teams. So Professor Davis, who raised their hand first?
I don't know.
Okay, so one of y'all go first, please. Oh, you don't know.
I can go.
Thank
I
you.
was just gonna say that like this quote talks about how like whatever happens to you in the past, you carry with you. Like as a general human, like you sort of hold on to stuff that's happened to you, and then whether it's acknowledged or not, it's sort of like the reality of your life.
Mhm. Excellent.
And then Sydney.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm seeing the names.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think in the context of what we just did, just about how we like process trauma and how it stays with us and affects what we do and what we choose to do about that, like whether we choose to address it and or let it kind of like affect us subconsciously.
Mhm. Yeah, it impacts how you see yourself in some ways, right? Like, I told the story about when the teacher told me she basically made fun of me, and basically, to this day, I feel like I can't sing. And so that moment basically shut off my opportunity to be the next Michael Jackson, right? Or the next Usher, right? Or the next Frank Sinatra. These small moments profoundly impact us, and we have to be aware of what we say, what we do, and their impact on someone else. Any other thoughts before we move on? No. Okay. All All right. Oh, let me get some feedback on that activity. All right. So I broke out up into groups of 3. You had to see people who you may or may not know. How did that feel? Did it feel weird? Thumbs up. Okay. Tell you guys say more than that. What about it? What about it was cool? Let me get some different people to talk to. Any hands up, Professor Davis? Oh, go ahead. Go. I said, huh?
Don't know if you were talking about me.
Yeah, Cora. Yep, Cora.
No, I liked it. It was nice. I think it's always like nice to hear like other people's experiences and like thoughts on stuff like that. Especially whenever I've had teachers in the past and professors in the past that do it with like things that are too like harsh and serious, but this was like nice. Like it didn't feel like I was being too invasive like on their past and like things that have happened to them. And it was like just like a good discussion of just about like different things that like we faced in school growing up, and just like how there's a lot of overlap, even if you're not from the same like regional area or backgrounds.
Thank you, Kayla. I mean, thank you, Ms. Bradley. I think Kayla had her hand up. I'm sorry. I gotta get these names together.
I enjoyed it. I think for me it was a little bit cathartic, like admitting my wrongdoings that I probably haven't said to anyone in a way that was like I feel bad about it, instead of like someone saying don't say that to people, and we're like I shouldn't have said that, instead of getting defensive about it and rather admitting it. So I enjoyed it in that kind of way. That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. Okay, all right. Any other comments? Are there any hands before we move on? Vasilia, okay.
Yeah, it was like Kyle said, it was kind of good to get stuff out that I hadn't thought about in a while, and having it in a more casual atmosphere made it easier to share.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rachel?
I really like that you sort of gave us an option to either tell something that, you know, happened to us or something that like we did to someone else. So if maybe you had like a bad experience with one or the other, you weren't shut down or shut out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the idea of choice, right? Right. And this, so I want you all to understand that everything that we're doing, we're building towards something. So my hope is that this will all make sense as we move through. Okay, so we're going to move on. Okay, so now we're going to make a radical shift. I'm going to get into some really heavy content. We're going to talk about the brain, how the brain works. We're going to talk about stress. Okay, so I'm going to do the stereotypical professor thing. And I'm just going to talk. There's going to be a lot of sit and get, but I promise you, if you're not paying attention, I'm gonna have some questions and you're gonna be lost. So if I say something that doesn't make sense, or if I say something and you want more clarity, say something. Don't just let me just go through a whole bunch of information. Y'all are sitting there like, you know, finish him, you know, like just say something to me. Okay, that's a Mortal Kombat joke for all the gamers. I'm old school. You may not know that. Okay, all right. Here's what I want you all to understand. Stress matters. Stress really matters. All right. And there are basically 3 types of stress that we talk about in the educational world. Okay. You have positive stress, you have tolerable stress, and you have toxic stress. And as you can see, I'm working on 2 screens. So as you can see, I have a brief definition, but I want to tell you, I just want to talk about this a little bit more. So positive stress is something like you have a test, right? You have a test coming up, but you studied, or you know, you're in a choir and you have to sing, or it's this, you know, really handsome young man or young lady that you met and you're going to meet them, right? It's like, you know, heart palpitations a little bit, you're excited, you're a little bit nervous, like that's positive stress, right? That's the type of stress that could motivate you and make you, you know, help you get to the top of your game, right? Now, then we have something called tolerable stress. And that is the type of stress that individuals deal with that can be somewhat traumatic, right? So A grandparent has COVID, right? A loved uncle passes away. A parent passes away, right? It's stressful, but it's tolerable, right? It starts and it stops. There is a time frame on this stress, okay? So we got the positive stress, it comes and goes, bam, done. The tolerable stress, it hurts, it's painful, but it's basically time bound. There's a third level of stress, and we call this toxic stress. And that is the prolonged activation of stress. So that is, mom dies 6 weeks later, dad dies 2 weeks later, grandma dies 2 weeks later, grandpa dies 1 week later, aunt dies, right? It is a situation that never seems to get better. Now, if you go back to your reading, you learned about all the different ways in which children are abused, right? Some children are forced into prostitution. What type of stress would that be?
Toxic.
Toxic.
Why?
Because it's continuous.
Because it's continuous, okay? Now, what about if we were driving down the street and you saw an accident and somebody got hurt? What type of stress would that be?
Tolerable.
Tolerable, possibly. What if you were in the car?
Potentially toxic.
Okay, potentially toxic. Why?
Because you experienced it firsthand, so you may experience like being stressed. Let's say like you get nightmares over and over again, for example.
There's a psychological element to that, right? All right. You go to your favorite restaurant and Beyonce's there. And Beyonce's there. What kind of stress is that?
Positive.
Say it again.
Positive.
Positive. Okay. What if someone goes to their favorite restaurant and there is a celebrity there, but that celebrity raped them?
Toxic.
Toxic.
Why?
Because it could have like psychological.
The psychological. Thank you, Chloe. So, and I'm pressing everybody on this because I want you to understand that what's positive stress for me could be tolerable stress for someone else, which could be toxic stress for somebody else, right? It's all about how we are experiencing the particular situation, right? A person's social context, a person's past is always present, right? Now, check for understanding. Just yell them out. Final paper submission coming up. What type of stress?
Positive.
Positive. My mom didn't come home last night. Now my little sister's asking me to cook breakfast. What is that?
Tolerable.
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 Everybody says tolerable. Anybody say anything different?
I think it could be toxic.
How could it be
Like if
toxic?
if it's happened before, you don't know where she is, how long she'll be gone, or like if you're on your own, or like if she's dead or something.
Yeah, that's true. It could be tolerable, definitely. Could be toxic. All right. We have a championship game. Let's go. I'm ready to ball.
Positive.
Positive.
Okay. Could it be something else?
Yeah.
What?
I guess it could be tolerable, or I guess it could be even toxic, but maybe tolerable if you have a lot riding on it, or you have pressure from other people like your coach or parents for scholarships or whatnot.
There you go. He's always tripping over a game. Like it's only a game, right? But maybe it's not a game, right? When you open yourself up to being curious, then you can understand individuals better. The Redskins play the Cowboys.
Positive.
Positive.
If you like those
Positive?
teams,
Okay.
I guess.
Okay.
Be tolerable.
Tolerable. Who said that? Who said that? It was a male voice. I haven't heard a lot of male voice.
Me.
Speak on that. Speak on that.
Well, I think Only in the sense that if you're in some kind of gambling hole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, a gambling cult, not just a gambling ring, a cult, huh?
I said like a hole, like if you're,
Oh, okay.
in debt to a bookie or.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit niche, but it could be not just positive.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Professor Davis, why don't you give us some interesting statistics about Washington, D.C. and the Cowboys versus Redskins?
I plead the fifth. I don't know.
We were talking some time ago, and you shared that when the Redskins play the Cowboys, that there are.
Oh yeah, it seems like when the Washington football team.
Oh
yes.
Sorry, y'all. I apologize. Forgive me.
Together. Okay, so when the Washington football team plays the Cowboys, it seems like no matter how bad their season is going, they actually play better and they usually win. And I think it's because they experience a certain amount of pressure, and so they rise to the occasion.
But what about the domestic violence clause?
In terms of these two teams?
In terms of DC, I think you were sharing a statistic about.
Oh yes, when they play, it has the same effect in DC. It has the same effect as other places when the Super Bowl happens, which is that the DV cases go up. Football games, Sunday football can be a very dangerous time for DV victims because there's a lot of drinking that happens and there's a lot of pressure. And like Orlando said, people sometimes have gambling debts that they're upset about, and that can sometimes result in really increased DV numbers. But in our region, these two teams playing each other is just like the Super Bowl.
Isn't the Super Bowl also an increased time for like sex trafficking and stuff like that?
That's right, Benjamin. The to the point now where the FBI usually will send out has always over the last I think 4 or 5 years, we've sent out a task force for Super Bowl cities to start doing the work ahead of time, because they actually the traffickers actually come to town ahead of the game to set up and start advertising. So yeah.
Thank you, Professor Davis. And again, I sincerely mean that. Forgive me. I should not have that epithet in this slide. It should be Washington football team. I apologize, everyone. I will change the slide immediately. Last one. She is standing outside of my door again. God, please don't let him, her in. Come in.
Toxic.
Yeah.
Toxic.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the brain. I'm going to talk to you about the stress hormone called cortisol, which we all have. And then we're going to talk about the different parts of the brain and how cortisol impacts the brain. This is foundational for our moving forward, okay? So everyone basically has a couple of hormones in your body. One is called cortisol. That is the stress hormone. The second is called oxytocin, right? Think of oxytocin as the love hormone. When stressful events happen in your life, which we all experience, your body releases cortisol, right? It basically floods your body. And you might have heard of the fight, flight, freeze response, right? So you're experiencing a stressful situation. Let's say you're going for a jog and you see a huge pit bull, right? Immediately, your muscles become stronger and you may feel like, Usain Bolt, you're ready to just, get moving. That is basically cortisol flooding your body and giving you the increased focus, increased speed and agility to evade a particular situation, or to fight your way through a particular situation, or to hide and stay as still as possible so that no one will know that you are there. Again, that's our fight, flight, and freeze response. And this chemical impacts your muscles. It impacts everything. It also impacts your brain. because when your body is being flooded with cortisol, it causes your brain to act in a different way, okay? Now, as you can see, this is a very basic diagram of the brain. There are 3 regions. The prefrontal cortex. This is responsible for executive functioning like self-regulation and attention, right? So if your prefrontal cortex is operating correctly, you can sit and you can sustain attention. Like most of you are sitting, you're sustaining attention, you're focused. The hippocampus is responsible for learning and memory, right? So you have short-term memory, long-term memory. You get information, it moves from short-term to long-term, and then it's stored. Because you have this ability to remember information, that enables you to learn new information, right? The amygdala is responsible for emotional regulation, okay? Now, the amygdala is essentially the smoke signal for the brain. The amygdala is where all of those memories of those individuals saying negative things to you, that's where they live, in the amygdala, because that's where you're, the amygdala speaks to all 3, the amygdala speaks to all these important parts of your brain, right? So it remembers all of this information, right? That's where your prototype or your archetype for a dog is. So when you're running, your amygdala says, hey, dog danger, especially pit bull. It can bite, it can lock its jaw, you in trouble, get out of here, right? It is the smoke signal. It tells you everything, right? It says it's constantly yelling. If it perceives a threat, it's constantly yelling, watch out, don't go this way, go that way, right? The hippocampus, as I said, is in charge of learning and memory, and is extremely important. So what happens is when cortisol is flooding your body, your amygdala is in charge, okay? It's emotional regulation and it's reactivity, okay? Now, it tells your hippocampus, chill out, we ain't got no time for learning, right? The only thing we need to remember is that I see a dog, that dog may bite me, a dog bit me when I was 6, I don't want that to happen again. That's the only memory we're going to be thinking about, and we need to react, right? Executive functioning, we don't need all that, because the only thing I need to do is to get up out of here. Yeah, are y'all following me? Right? When your brain is flooded with cortisol, long-term memory, gone, right? Some executive functioning, gone, right? Self-regulation, gone, right? That's why some people urinate on themselves, right? All that stuff, all that regulation, all that stuff, gone. Because the amygdala is in charge. It is blaring, get out, it's dangerous. People cry, people are uncontrollable, people start shaking, because the only thing they want to do is get away, because the amygdala is saying to them, we are in danger, get out of here now. Are we clear? Any questions? All right. Now, we talked about pop. Go ahead, Chloe.
Is the amygdala what causes panic attacks then? I don't know if this is too sciencey.
Yeah, so
you.
I don't want us to go into what causes what. What I will say is that there could be a stimuli that causes your amygdala to react, which then floods your body with cortisol, which can lead to a panic attack, right? Right, okay. I'm not going to say that the amygdala is responsible for the panic attack, right? But the amygdala is a part of that whole entire process, right? Answering that question is a whole different class. Okay, but that's a great question. That's a great question. You're making connections. Any other questions? No? Okay. We're good? Okay. We'll move on. All right, so check for understanding, see if y'all paying attention. I am responsible for memory. Who is this? What part of the brain is this? You can just say it. For learning and memory.
Yes. Hippocampus.
Hippocampus, good. Good. We'll move on. Next one. It is my job to warn you. I sound the alarm when a traumatic moment is happening or when something appears like it might happen again.
Amygdala.
Amygdala. Here we go. Okay. Yo, son. Self-regulation and attention, son. That's all me.
Prefrontal cortex.
There we go. We got some science majors in here. I'm a hormone. I make you feel the love.
Oxytocin.
There we go. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. I can hurt you from the inside when I turn up.
Cortisol.
Cortisol. Okay. So look, this is very important information. You all mastered it. Okay. This is a brief video. It's basically going to talk about cortisol in a different way. Lord, I hope this works. Yeah, I think it's going to work. Okay, right
The
there.
other chemical to be aware of in male brain and female brain, we're talking about behaviors, is cortisol. And there's a lot more research out there on cortisol and the impact on brains. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and cortisol in baseline amounts is good. It's what allows us to get through the day, gives us the energy, helps us remember what we're going to say, what we're going to do. But cortisol in high amounts begins to hijack the brain. And so what that means is it causes you the inability to distinguish between real and imagined threats. We know that kids that have experienced trauma or live in high stressful situations, it's similar to having sort of a drip, 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 a leaky faucet of cortisol in the brain, which then when they have a very small perceived or real being disrespected or power struggle, they have a huge reaction because it is a waterfall of cortisol in that brain. So as educators, we need to keep in mind that these kids may already come to us with an elevated amount of cortisol. And when they start to break down or escalate in their behaviors, we need to keep in mind that there's no stabbing allowed, no shouting, threatening, accusing, or blaming, because it's the cortisol that we're dealing with, not the child. The other chemical to be
Okay. I'm going to pause right there, everybody. Let me get someone to just, give me your thoughts. Like, what do you take away from that? And I want to ask if you've already spoken, I want you to hold off for a second, because we have 30 people on this call, and I don't want anybody to have the opportunity to hide, because everybody has something valuable to share. So, okay, so it's called wait time. That's what we teachers call it, wait time. So before you say, okay, all right, Mary, let's go.
Sure. I thought that those comments were especially interesting from the perspective of the school perspective, because a lot of times if a kid is acting out in class or is not behaving correctly, or the way the teacher wants them to, a first response can kind of be the teacher gets upset, or they immediately enact a negative, a punishment or something like that, when in reality there may be some kind of stress that's actually causing the behavior rather than just the child themselves.
Anyone else? Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Y'all know I'm a teacher. I can wait forever.
I liked the video. I thought it did a good job. It makes a lot of sense. Just I worked at daycares and stuff in the past, when I was in high school, and just I did at my church. So there was a couple kids, siblings, and they were having it was rough at home because their mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. And so they started, they were a lot more reactive whenever little things would go wrong. And so seeing that explained, it just kind of really clicked, and that makes a lot more sense now, just with the way they were acting and responded to, not getting the snack that they wanted, or some other kid taking their toy, or this or that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent point, right? So from a school perspective, we have children who are dealing with parents who are chronically sick, and every time they go to the hospital, they're gone for at least a month. So if someone starts to cough, cortisol, right, is going. What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. Mom's going to be gone for a month. Oh my God. So then they come to school and a teacher says, hey, your shoe's untied. I don't care if my shoe's untied. Right? And you're like, whoa, where did this reaction come from? What typically happens is we begin to racialize behaviors. There's something wrong with this black child, right? But in actuality, what's happening to this child is totally normal. Their bodies have been flooded with cortisol for the last week and a half. They're on edge, and the slightest thing can set them off. So, Professor Davis, can you speak to how this looks in some of your victims?
Yes, the victims that come in for different cases, they are combative with us in terms of, just us being law enforcement, but just in general, right? Our approach to them. And sometimes if we haven't been trauma informed in terms of our training, then we misread their rudeness to us or their reactions to us as an actual reaction to us personally, as opposed to their reaction to the trauma that they've suffered. And what's really sad about that for us is that we have the benefit of knowing the trauma that they've just dealt with, whereas a teacher may not, right? A teacher may not have that information. And even with us knowing the information, sometimes we're responding in a way that's not responsible. I think Cora said in the chat, or in kids that have separated parents, it may change depending on which household they're in at any given time. So I thought that was a good comment. And I think Rachel had her hand raised as well.
Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to say, I think that it's really interesting and really beneficial, like as a supplement to strain theory, and also to recidivism in terms of incarceration. I mean, putting someone in an environment where they're going to be constantly stressed, constantly dealing with threats, and then putting them back outside and being like, okay, go back to normal life now, like, is very clearly not, it's just going to add, they're going to be set off by little things. They're going to have, increased stressors to worry about. So I think it's important, I think, to have that knowledge to, like, when you're looking through specifically like the school to prison pipeline.
That's an excellent point. And to press your point a little bit more, because I'm sure some people would disagree and say, well, they were in jail and that's a traumatic experience. What do you mean? Right? But I think the greater question for me is, what does it mean that individuals can find more acceptance and love inside of a cell than outside in freedom? Right? That like, if being outside of prison is going to trigger me and flood my body with cortisol, in this place, which is supposed to be a negative, is actually supporting me in ways that outside doesn't. That says something about how we care about each other, right? Okay. Our next move, we in the second move, and I'm already way behind schedule. Okay, so how does stress show up in the classroom? I have another video. It's one of my favorite shows called The Wire. I don't know if any of you have seen The Wire before. Now, I want to caution you. I picked this video because it's one of my favorite shows. However, I do not want us to racialize behavior. Well, what I mean by that is I don't want this to become a stereotype. There are black and brown children in this video. This is not how black and brown children typically behave. However, there are children who are dealing with high levels of stress who respond in different ways, okay? And so we're going to watch this video, and then we're going to go to breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you a question, okay? So I really need you all to pay attention. Try to pay attention to even like the way in which students look, how they move their hands, how they react. Are they tense? Are they calm? All right.
Today being the first day Let's have some fun. I'm gonna throw you a little math puzzle. See if I can get you thinking on your feet. Andre is leaving Baltimore.
Mr. Presbo, I need to change my seat because this boy here smells like a garbage can.
All right, you need to work a little on your compassion skills.
Yeah, he needs to work a little on his soap and water skills.
All right, like I was saying, my friend Andre is leaving Baltimore. He's going 60 miles an hour.
Hey, what side of Baltimore? East or west?
Right. It doesn't make any difference.
That's what you think.
Okay, east. West. Okay. Okay. And he's going to Philadelphia.
Man, Philly's ass. So you think Allen Iverson is ass?
Okay, stop.
Yo, he only played for them. He ain't from there. Hey, I never played for the Sixers no matter how much they pay me. Nigga, they pay your ass to go away.
Enough. Okay, Andre's leaving Baltimore, West Baltimore, traveling 60 miles per hour. He's going to Philadelphia, which is 80 miles away.
Kinda come. Hey, he driving on I-95. We need to watch out for the state police. They be profiling niggas. He ain't say Andre was black, yeah? Come on, Randy. Andre from the west side? Hey,
Yo, you know he's black. You know he's black.
Is he driving?
Mr. Presbo, you say he traveling in the car? Is he driving or is he like in the back seat?
You know what? Fun is fun. Today being the first day.
I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know how that happened.
Hey!
Everything okay in here?
All right. Okay, here's my question. What did you see? So Professor Davis, I want us to break out again into different groups, same number of groups, and we'll call everybody back in about 4.5 minutes. Everybody should have 30 seconds of think time. And then for a minute, you get to share what you saw, but you must put it in conversation with our previous discussion. Are there any clarifying questions, please?
It's okay.
Once we left, I had the fear that this was gonna happen.
We'll get this right the next time.
Maybe we do need to stop watch.
All right, party people, that was a longer breakout room. Okay. Andrew, anything you want to share, brother?
Yes, we just talked about how like I think two things. One is that like you do like when working with children, it's important to remember like what's going on outside of the classroom and how it impacts what's going on in, and sort of tied into that video. And then another thing we touched on was the racial dynamics of the video and how they didn't seem to show, you know, in the video there was like a very awkward situation when it was just the white teacher in the room, but then as soon as the Black teacher came in, the entire mood sort of changed, and so that was notable as well.
Yeah, we talked about that as well. So I'm interested to hear, like, some individuals say, hey, was that fear? Was that respect? What was that? What are some of your all's thoughts? What is that about? Olivia, then Rachel.
I mean, at that part of the scene, I kind of thought of it as like she doesn't play, but they can play with the teacher themselves. And when she came in, it seemed more like respect to me, but knowing that if you do anything, there will be repercussions. Unlike, I mean, the white teacher, he doesn't really know their community, it seems, but
What's your evidence to support that?
I don't know. It kind of gave off that vibe. I haven't watched the show itself, but
in that scene, what was it that he said or didn't say that made you feel like he didn't know that?
I mean, with Baltimore, talking about East and West, like West Baltimore, East Baltimore. And he was like East, and they're like boo. So yeah.
Rachel, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think also like he very clearly, didn't understand, in that sense, but there was also like it was very clear that like if, there was no consequences when that first girl started like making fun of the kid next to her. He kind of was just like, you need to be more compassionate, and then like nothing happened. He didn't give her permission to move. She just moved. It's very clear like they didn't respect him because I don't think he holds them accountable in any way. He just kind of was like, oh yeah, well. And it sounds like, a teacher came in, it's very clear that, or the principal or whoever came in was very clear, like she wouldn't have put up with that. Like, and it was just kind of like, he doesn't seem to understand, even maybe the impacts of like how that behavior or like, can hurt the other students, and like didn't really seem to care, which I think is maybe why they didn't respect him.
Correct. And what we talked about in my group was, this idea of relational trust, that clearly the teacher, it was a teacher at the end who came in. She was the ELA teacher. So she taught English and language arts, and she had been at the school for a long time. And all of the students knew her or had siblings who knew her, and they wanted to be seen by her as respectful. So when she walked in, it's like, oh, nah, I don't, let's do what we need to do, because she's going to walk down the street and tell our moms. So she had a certain level of respect from the students. Mr. Presbeluski, he was not in touch. He did not know his scholars. He talked about East Baltimore and everybody's from West Baltimore. He allowed the young lady to talk. The student's nickname is Dookie. He allowed the young lady to talk about Dookie, and you could see as the young lady said those things to him, he kind of recoiled and began to focus more on that blue thing he had in his hand. Then he allowed the young lady to go to the back of the classroom and mess with another student, right? And if you have a group of students who are like, so let me move to the next slide. So Dookie, in the show, he is homeless. So even if he wanted to take a bath, he can't. He can't even take a shower. He lives in the slide's not showing? Is the slide showing now?
No, they're still not showing.
Oh God, none of the slides are showing?
We are just seeing you at the moment.
Okay, let's see what happened. I don't know what happened. Oh yeah, I must have stopped sharing. Okay, let's try this again, y'all. I apologize. Uh-oh. Can y'all see the slide now? Okay. Okay, so this is Dookie. He is homeless. He lives in an abandoned house. He can't take a shower even if he wanted to. Every night he has to figure out what he's going to eat. Mr. Presbeluski, he was kicked off of the police force for shooting someone. He, you know, he was good at math, so they sent him into a classroom and he took no time to learn the students at all, right? Which causes a lot of conflicts, right? So, one thing we talked about was the one young man who was sitting in the front. Once everything started to happen, he grabbed his books and quietly walked out, right? So everyone responds to events like this differently. What I wanted you all to kind of see was that if you look closely at every student, you can see the effects of, you know, their bodies being flooded with cortisol, right? The one young lady, she was constantly fidgeting, right? She could never sit still. The other young lady, although she was looking at Mr. Presbeluski, she looked like she was frustrated. She had her fist balled up. She kept, every posture she made was a clenched fist or something, right? So everyone, like the young man who was sitting in the front, wasn't focused on the lesson at all. It seemed as if he was thinking about something else, and all he wanted to do was talk about basketball and Baltimore versus East Baltimore. So there were a lot of dynamics going on. But when students come to class and they say, oh, I have a headache, and they do like this, is it really a headache, right? Sometimes individuals that we see, they show us that they hurt their knee, and we're, oh, let me get you a Band-Aid. But in actuality, I got cut because I crawled under the sink because dad hit mom again. There are so many different, there's so many different, trying to find the word. There's so much pain that children bring into the classroom. There's so much pain that as adults we carry around from our past, because the past is always present. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the ACE study. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. And there was a study done, and the study looked at the experiences of children in the first 18 years. And in a nutshell, the research said that there are about 10 events that have a lasting impact on children. All right, and these incidents lead to cortisol being released in your body for extended periods of time, and this can actually impact your immune system. It can impact your heart, your liver, and everything. These 10 experiences, if a child faces them. And the 10 types of adverse childhood experiences are emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. If someone sees their mother threatened violently, physical neglect, mental illness in the household, parental separation or divorce, incarcerated household member, emotional neglect, and if you lived in a house where there is substance abuse, right? If you grow up and you experience any of these, it's called the ACE, and it can have a profound impact on you. And here is a tie-in to this particular class, because in many instances, Professor Davis has to work with and help individuals of sexual violence and sexual abuse find healing, right? And this is definitely an adverse childhood experience. And if you look at this list very carefully, if I am a child and I experience sexual abuse, I probably experience physical abuse and emotional abuse. And it's quite possible that my mother is threatened violently, right? and I'm physically neglected, that there is some kind of mental illness, or there are individuals who are incarcerated, were incarcerated. There's emotional neglect, and there's definitely substance abuse, right? So if you are a child who lives in a home where, you know, your mom or dad is involved in the sex trade, you are experiencing at least 4 or 5 of these. So what are the impact? What is the impact, right? And I want you all to take a second and just read this to yourselves. So when the ACE study was done, only 36 had never experienced an ACE during the first 18 years. So that means that 64% of people had. 26% had 1, 16% had 2, 9%, almost 10% had 3, and 13% had 4. So what does this mean? Right? I'm going to skip ahead because we're behind. Well, oh yeah, okay, that'll work. So Professor Davis is saying we should take a break. Let's take a break. I'm going to leave this slide up, but let's take a break, people. You all have been great. Like, I appreciate your engagement and your focus. I wish I were like you all in college. But we're going to take a break. How long are we going to take the break for, Professor Davis? 7:05. 7:05 it is. I'll see you all at 7:05, and I promise I'll hurry up and wrap this up. Hey, party people, welcome back. Let's see how many people we got. Okay, we got 31. Okay. Hey, Professor Davis, just let me know when we can begin. Let's go ahead. Okay. Hope everybody had a chance to stretch. The last thing we talked about was how 64% of individuals in the United States have at least one ACE experience. How do you all respond to that? 64% of individuals living in the United States have experienced one of these ACE factors. 64%. I think I see, who is that? Mary? Okay, go ahead. Oh, okay.
I just think like it's not that surprising considering the frequency of divorce and the frequency of mental illness. I think that those are probably driving at least the people who answered 1 or like 2. I feel like that probably makes up a large percentage of that sample.
Okay, go. Yeah. Rashana, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna just say that like I agree with Mary, and also like I mean not to be like pessimistic, but I thought that it might actually be like higher because of how common like Mary was saying for like divorce or abuse, and like how like I honestly think it might be higher because of how many people just don't talk about it or they can't talk about it. So yeah.
Anyone else? 64%.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that that's probably lower than it really is, just considering that I think it's something like 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So, I mean, that alone is 50%. And a lot of these are way more common than that. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's, closer to like 80 or 90%, to be honest.
Yeah, you get at a good point. Like, how many people actually told the truth, right? Any other reactions? Catherine, let's go.
Well, I do think that the divorce and mental illness probably have a lot of it. Unfortunately, I think we do have to recognize that emotional, physical, and sexual abuse and neglect also are probably a large number, especially like when it comes to child abuse. Like one of the statistics I was reading was that there's a report of child abuse every 10 seconds in the US. So a lot of these realistically are one of those forms of abuse.
Thank you, Catherine. Rachel?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think also like that it's probably potentially higher. I mean, especially if unless, I don't know exactly how they conducted this, but unless they like, fully explained how much like or what, the extent of emotional or any of these could reach, I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that there was maybe mental illness in the family, or they didn't realize that, there was substance abuse going on. Like, and they still had like the negative impacts of that, but they didn't like necessarily register it as, some type of traumatic event. So just because they said no in the survey doesn't mean that they, didn't experience that and weren't still impacted.
Excellent point. We'll pause and see if there's one more comment before we move on. Okay. So now I want to talk to you all about my good old buddy, Cortez. And that's the young Mr. Davis back in the day. And but this is how I dressed every day at school. I wore a suit, a tie, and a shirt. Love cufflinks, so I always had my cufflinks. And one of the reasons why I dressed this way is because I wanted to show young African-American males, young Latino, Latinx males, that we are beautiful, right? That we can dress in suits every day and we are intelligent, right? Because what you see is what you see. So one day, Cortez comes to school, and now one thing you need to know about Cortez is he is the funniest kid you'll ever meet in your life. He laughs at himself, he laughs at others. He was extremely bright, right? He loved to read. Math was not his strength, but he loved to read. He could analyze characters and settings and historical contexts in a way that blew my mind, right? And he had this like just free spirit about himself. But so one day he comes to school and he's not saying much, which is different for Cortez because Cortez, we call him walkie-talkie. He's walking and he's talking constantly. So he comes to school and yep, he's a fifth grader. He comes to school and we have small guided reading groups, and it's Cortez, it's Keon, it's a couple of young ladies. And so Keon is about 6'1" in sixth grade. He's about 260 pounds in sixth grade. And he's strong as an ox in fifth grade, right? And so Cortez is about 5'3", and he probably weighs about 85 pounds. So Cortez walks up into class and he keeps yelling at Keon and he's saying, "You're gonna stop playing with me. You're gonna stop playing with me." And Keon is like, "What's wrong with you? Like I didn't say anything." And so Cortez gets up, "You're gonna stop talking to me. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you." So then he gets up and he sticks his chest out and he pushes his chest into Keon. And Keon is like, "Yo, Mr. Davis, get your boy," right? It's like, "Cortez, what's wrong with you? I ain't scared of nobody in here. I ain't scared of nobody." And so he literally runs up to Keon, pushes his chest into him, and tries to push him into the wall. And Keon is like, "Stop touching me," right? And I have to run over and stop this because Keon is starting to get upset. And so when I go over there to ask, Cortez, like, "Calm down, man. Talk to me. Tell me what's wrong." Cortez loses his damn mind. And he starts to hit me and grab me and he takes his hand, he takes that beautiful blue tie, and he wraps it up like this, and he literally starts to climb up my body and punch and scratch me, right? To the point where I'm like, Cortez, like I lift my arm out like this, and Cortez is literally hanging off my arm. I said, Cortez, I don't know what's going on, but Cortez, you need to chill out. And so he begins to cuss at me. F you, Mr. Davis. I'm not scared of you. I'm going to beat your ass. And I'm like, Cortez, please calm down. So I literally have to take this child, holding onto my arm, downstairs to our, it's called an ISS coordinator. So it's basically an in-school suspension coordinator. And I walk into Ms. Jackson's office and I say, Ms. Jackson, I don't know what's going on with Cortez. I love Cortez to death. And she takes him off my arm and he sits down, and I'm pissed off because now he done messed up my tie and messed up my shirt, and now I got to go back to class, and I'm on 9, like I don't know what just happened, right? So I finished teaching class, right? Because emotional constancy is important. And at about 3:15, Cortez comes to my classroom, and I am pissed the hell off because why did Cortez do this to me of all people? I come in here every day. All I try to do is teach. I buy them Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like we go on Saturday field trips. I did a home visit to visit him. I know all about his turtles in the house. Listen, I've done everything to help this child. Why in the hell is this child doing this to me? And Cortez says to me, I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, but last night, my mom's boyfriend got high on PCP, and I thought he killed her. And I wanted to do something, Mr. Davis. I wanted to stand up for my mom, but the guy is your height, and he's big like you. And every time I tried to defend my mom, he would just flick me across the room. So I decided when I came to school today, I was going to stand up for myself. This is how domestic violence shows up in the classroom. It's not because it's the bad Black kids. It's not because it's the dangerous Black male. It's because there's domestic violence that has thrown this child's body into overload. He's flooded with cortisol. He spent all night thinking about his mom, wondering if she was dead. And he wanted to show someone that he can actually protect his mother. Cortez, one of the nicest kids you ever meet in your entire life. And I had the nerve to wonder why this was happening to me. How many ace factors did Cortez have? Well, he saw his mom abused. He was physically abused. We can argue emotional neglect. That can happen in the household. That's at least 3. Substance abuse, the man was high on PCP. That's 4, as we say in DC, not 4, 4. Is this a bad kid? No. This is a child who is trying to do his very best to respond to his circumstances. Now, if I'm Mr. Presbalewski, right, am I able to respond to him in a way that is caring? Do I go off on him and say, boy, get the hell out of my class. You don't put your hands on me. You messed up my tailor-made suit. No. Cortez, man, you know I love you. The way you were acting just didn't make sense to me. Come on over here and get your work done. You're not gonna get out of my work that easy. This is how domestic violence shows up in schools. Listen, stress and trauma doesn't come to school and say to the child, Cortez, you go ahead inside. I'm gonna be outside waiting for you. You go have a great day, buddy. The stress and trauma, it'll be waiting right here at the door when you come out, and then I'll mess with you some more. No, stress and trauma comes into that classroom and plays itself out in so many ways. And if you want to be an educator, if you want to work with different populations of people, you have to train your eye to see it. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to learn about cultures outside of yours so that you can train your eyes and ears to see some of this. If Cortez had a different teacher, I wonder how that moment would have impacted him. Would he have been expelled from school? Would he have been arrested? Because you all have seen videos of people being arrested in school, right? We've seen police officers slam people down, knocking people unconscious. We've seen 5-year-olds being arrested and put in police cars. For a 5-year-old kindergartner? What is that kindergartner experienced? Why can't we become curious? Is that middle schooler who was 12 to 14 years old, is she being trafficked? Is that why she's behaving that way? Is that why he's behaving that way? We have to be curious. We have to give people their humanity. Individuals are sometimes stuck in situations that they have no control over. But what do? We racialize the behaviors and we make that group of people bad. Or we make that gender bad. Oh, she's just a blank. Or he's just a blank. When it's so much more complex than that. ACEs are real. Cortisol is real. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. This is actually the ACEs quiz. And I want you all, we're going to walk through these. And I don't want you to, I'm not asking you to disclose any information. But I do have an anonymous poll that we can all take to share information. I'm going to tell you right now, my ACE score is a 5. My ACE score is a 5. But I want you to, we're going to read through each question. And then at the end, there is, I don't know if you ever heard of Poll Everywhere. There's a way that you can text a number and then you can put your answer in. It will not tell us your name, it will not keep your number, anything. It's just a way for you to show the number. Because I think it's important for us to see how ACEs impacts everyone. All right, so question number 1. Oh, can somebody read it for me? Get some active engagement.
I can do it.
What?
Before your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt?
Yeah. If you say yes, then you have a score of 1. If you say no, you have a score of 0. May I have a different volunteer?
Yeah, I can do it. Before your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured?
Yes, you have another ACE. No, you don't. Number 3. Need somebody different. Preferably somebody who hasn't spoken yet, please.
Before your 18th birthday, did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you or have you touch their body in a sexual way or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you?
Now, this gets to the other point. If you've been asked this question, you may not respond truthfully, depending on who's capturing this information, right? Because a lot of you say, hey, only 64%, it should be higher. All right, next volunteer, please.
Before your 18th birthday, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other?
Thank you. Next volunteer, please.
I can read.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Before your 18th birthday, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it?
Number 6.
Before your 18th birthday, was a biological parent ever lost you through divorce, abandonment, or other reason?
Number 7.
Before your 18th birthday, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had thrown something at her? Or sometimes, often, or very often, been hit with a fist or hit with something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or a knife?
Number 8.
Before your 18th birthday, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic, or who used street drugs?
Number 9.
Before your 18th birthday, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide?
And number 10.
Before your 18th birthday, did a household member go to prison?
I just want us to sit with these questions for a moment. So as I said, some years ago, researchers at Kaiser did this large study on adverse childhood experiences, and they wanted to figure out which types of experiences children went through that were particularly impactful on them in their lives. And initially, what researchers found were that 10 experiences that had that there were these 10 experiences that had a profound impact on students or children. There have been additional research that talks about racism, bullying, experiences in foster care that could be also added to the survey, but these are the experiences. And the piece that I keep on coming back to is that I want you all to understand that at any given moment, depending on who you are working with, whether you're specifically, if you're working with children, you can be working with a child who has experienced one of these experiences, and it's going to profoundly impact their ability to function. If their bodies are being flooded with cortisol, they're not going to be able to remember. They're not going to be able to concentrate because that amygdala is constantly yelling, trouble, 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 trouble. Like I said, that day, me being 6'6" and 250 pounds, it was a trigger for Cortez. You look just like the man who I think nearly tried to kill my mom last night. Trouble, trouble, trouble. I'm not going to focus. I'm not going to do my work. I got to stay away from you. Matter of fact, I got to take you down the way I couldn't take that man down in my house. Now, here's something extremely profound. Children who experience 4 or more ACEs. Remember, my score is a 5. That means I'm 32 times more likely to have learning and behavioral problems. I'm 2 to 3 times at greater risk for developing heart disease and cancer. Isn't it interesting that Black and brown communities have a higher rate of heart disease and cancer? I wonder if that has anything to do with ACEs. Eight out of 10 leading causes of death in the United States correlate with exposure to 4 or more ACEs. So if you have an ACE score of 4 or more, that's if you have 4 or if your score is 4 or more, you are 10 to 12 times you have a 10 to 12 times greater risk of drug use or attempted suicide. If you have 6 or more ACEs, on average, your lifespan is shortened by almost 20 years. The past is always present, whether we acknowledge its profound reality or not. The past is always present. I wanted us to kind of do this survey, but I think you all understand the point I was trying to make. You're on mute.
Because there was one point in the chat Kyla brought up. She said, do you think age plays a factor? Do we invalidate children's feelings because we feel they're too young to have experiences like Cortez?
Absolutely. And I think it is naivety, right? I think it is so let me back up a little bit. If you had told me when I first went into the classroom that I would be teaching scholars who were dealing with some of the trauma that they had to deal with, ain't no way in hell I would have like, nah, and I'm in, Ward 5 Northeast DC, right? I've been in Title I schools since I've been here. No. But let me tell you something. When I started teaching 1, 2, the third school that I taught at, it was a school in Northeast DC in Trinidad. And I noticed, so we started this program of home visits, right? And so basically what you do is, you had, like I had a classroom grandmother, Grandma McDonald and I, we would go and we would visit the families and we'd say, hey, Mr. Davis, this is Grandma McDonald. We'll be teaching your child. We just want to know something about you. I want to tell you something about me. And the parents, especially the moms, would call Grandma McDonald and the conversation would go something like this. Grandma, I don't know about that teacher, Mr. Davis, but I trust you. I don't want my child in a classroom by herself with him. Why do you think that is? Somebody tell me why you think parents call and say that.
Oh yeah, go ahead, because yeah.
I was going to say because of your height and your race.
My height, my race. What else? What else could it be?
Oh, you're a male teacher.
What does that mean?
I think that, well, just like from my interpretation, teaching has always been seen as a woman's profession. And I think that a lot of people aren't used to seeing men in that profession.
I'll keep on pushing you, Jamie. What's the implication of that? What is this parent saying about me?
That you're only in that profession to have access to young women.
What does that say about that parent? Does that give me information about the parent? Possibly.
It shows that they may have had an encounter like that, well, an inappropriate encounter like that with a teacher or a trusted adult.
I like how you said it, with a trusted adult, someone who is supposed to be trusted. So do we invalidate? Yes, I think so. Or maybe it's that we don't want to see the reality, right? Children shouldn't have to go through this, but children do all the time. Everybody who went into a room, you all talked about an experience that you had with an adult that you still remember today. The past is always present. So a child has an experience, just because they come to school, it don't mean that that experience is not with them. It shapes it can shape who they become. Professor Davis, you have something you want to say?
And it also will affect how that parent interacts with you as the teacher. They may not trust you as the teacher, and so, when their kid is having a problem in class, they'll move them to another class, or they just won't engage because they have a certain view of you as a teacher. So how do you deal with that?
Is that a question for me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
But the short answer is you build trusting relationships with parents, and you cannot go to a school and stay at the school for 1 year and then leave. Right? You have to have longevity. Like, go back to The Wire. That teacher who stepped into the classroom and everybody sat down and did what they were supposed to do, she'd been there for years and years and years, right? She showed them that no matter what you do, no matter how much you misbehave, I'm going to be here. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you. So that leads me to another point that I forgot to put in this slideshow, and that is, so Dwight, you have an ACE score of 5. So it doesn't seem like you look pretty healthy. It doesn't seem like all this stuff happened. So there was another study that was done, and it was called the resilience study. And the study basically said, okay, you have all these people who've had these traumatic events. Why aren't they dying? Why aren't they using drugs, right? And they had a similar questionnaire, and it asked them 10 questions about resilience. Did you have a mentor? Were you encouraged? Did all of these things happen? And for me, that particular place was the Black church. We did plays, and I was affirmed because I was a good actor. I could memorize scripture. I could pray very well. The pastor asked me to do things in the church, right? So just as all these negative things were happening, all of these positive things were happening on the other side. And so as I was being torn down, there was this other community that was lifting me up, and cultivated my resilience. And that doesn't mean that I don't suffer from like feeling like I can't sing. But at the same time, right, that sense of resilience and self-esteem was cultivated. Okay, I see a hand up.
Yeah. I just had a question more so about your quote that's on the slide, because I guess when you're talking about, like, I guess if someone acknowledges the trauma that they've had in the past, that does not necessarily mean to forget, right? And I just wanted to, like, from what you were saying, but you kind of answered my question before I asked it, like kind of about the resilience C-test. Like, I didn't know if that was a thing, but I just kind of thought it was interesting that, like, I guess you can acknowledge some people can acknowledge what has happened to them, but I guess also like stride through what has happened at the same time. It was just a comment. I'm sorry. I know I'm not being coherent.
You are being coherent. You're being more coherent than you give yourself credit for. Professor Davis, can you talk about a little the resilience that you see in some of your victims and how they overcome and actually become leaders in the field?
Yeah, that does happen. There's one lady in particular who runs an organization called Courtney's House, and we'll talk about her over the course of this next next class that we'll have. Sorry. But she's actually a child sex trafficking survivor. And she has turned her trauma into an organization where she's been able to empower survivors. She's been able to use the knowledge of what happened to her to help other survivors. And so people definitely are able to overcome the DV experiences that they have, but we, as the professionals that will be working with them, some of you will be counselors, some of you will go into education. There are plenty of you who are saying you want to be attorneys. We have to have we have to have the ACE factors in mind. We also need to have the remedies in mind as we start to try to equip families to be able to handle what they've experienced. So for instance, our DV survivors, as they come out of these situations, as their attorney, as the prosecutor in the case, or as the advocate on the case, we need to be thinking about fortifying those families with those factors.
All right. I don't want to keep it over. I'm already way over. Okay, so I did have a brain break here. What's one thing that you take away from our learning this, not this AM, but this evening? How would you apply this learning? And what impact do you believe it will have on your interactions with victims, with students, with whoever? How will you apply your personal learnings? Before we get, I'm gonna come back to this slide. Like, I don't want this to be all, so intense. I want to let you know that just like stress negatively impacts the body and impacts the brain, like there are things that we can do to offset the impact of stress on students, right? And I want to go over some of those, and then we'll close with that, with the brain break question, and that'll be your exit ticket, okay? So we actually have the power to be brain builders. So students and individuals who've gone through so much trauma, there are small things that we can do that can radically change a child's trajectory. Like Cortez, it was a dark moment for him, but Cortez is doing extremely well, just like so many of my students are doing extremely well. And what does it mean to have a trauma-informed lens? Professor Davis talked a little bit about that, okay? Now, adopting a trauma-informed lens means that we have to realize and ask not what's wrong with the child, what happened to this child? Okay, that's a very different question. What's wrong with this kid? Why is this kid acting like this? What happened to this beautiful child? Very different question. Okay, then we have to recognize if a child is struggling, that means that there is something going on, right? Is their amygdala on fire? And if it is on fire, what's happening? Why can't this child remember these facts? It's not because they lack the mental capacity. Maybe it's because they have gone through a traumatic experience. They can't stop fidgeting. Maybe it's because their amygdala is on fire. We have to respond. We have to respond consistently. We can't do the Mr. Presbilla thing. We can't just let stuff happen, but we have to address behaviors in an equitable manner to let students know that this is a safe environment and you are a trusted adult, okay? And we have to be aware of triggers. We cannot re-traumatize students based on some flippant language, right? Like me having the name of that football team and I should have had Washington football team, that could be triggering to someone, right? Have to be aware of that. Okay, first and foremost, I'm saying trusting classrooms, but you have to have trusting environments. And if you really take a second and think about it, you all have a space that you go to. You have friends or family members or cousins or, you know, nephews or somebody. You have a place where you go to and you know that that place is a safe place. That's what we try to cultivate in our school. This is what I tried to cultivate in my classroom. I let students know, I gave them leadership opportunities, and I let them know that they could be themselves, that, you know, if you had an issue, I'll pull you to the side so we can talk, right? You know, I went to meet parents, and when I met parents, I was like, ooh, I know what I'm dealing with here. I know what they're dealing with here. And the child and I can talk about, hey, listen, I'm not going to tell your mom about this. I'm not going to tell your dad about this because I know they can overreact a little bit, but here's what I need you to do, okay? Right? So you have to do things to build relationships. And in Ms. David, Professor Davis's work, she is constantly working to build relationships with individuals, because basically what sometimes what students and adults try to do, they're just waiting. They just want to push and push and push until they find that point where you're going to drop them, right? I don't know, but if I do this, then they're going to tell me to get the hell on. Oh, they didn't do it. Oh, I'm going to do this, and that's going to get them to move the hell on, right? They just looking for that point for you to drop them because everybody else has dropped them. And it is so exhausting, but you have to jump through the hoops, because once that trust is built, you can help that child, you can help that victim, you can help that individual overcome their circumstances, all right?
And I just want to jump in here for our juvenile human trafficking victims. That is paramount. They will try you and try you and try you to see if you're gonna fail them, if the system is gonna fail them again. That's what they want to hurry up and have happen so they can move on.
And that's what the pimps say, right? All right, go over to the 5-0. Oh, they won't leave you. They ain't gonna do what I can do for you, right? That's part of the mental and emotional abuse, right? I remember a parent told me, F Mr. Davis, he ain't your effing father. He ain't gonna do nothing for you. You better come on home and do what I tell you to do. Forget that, excuses are tools of the incompetent, monuments of nothingness to build bridges to nowhere. Nobody care about that, right? That's what happens, all right? So trusting relationships, trusting classrooms, all right? This gets to like responding to negative behaviors. Once that young lady said he needed to do something about his soap and water skills, I would have said, hey, you need to do something about your talking skills, because right now you're talking real reckless. Come on now, he's a human being, right? So some people may see that as harsh, but it's like, no, we're not going to treat Dookie like that. Everybody has different circumstances, right? You have to respond in a way that is non-threatening, and because of the culture, I say it that way because of the culture of that particular classroom, right? You have to be aware of the culture, that you have to say it in a way to let the student know, no, I'm being serious. I'm talking to your vernacular. We're not going to do that. We don't operate this way. In another classroom, it may be said a little differently, but we respond to behaviors in a non-threatening way. We have emotional constancy, and we preserve the relationship, and we want to develop relational trust. Right, so you have to respond to behaviors, and then you have to develop trust. All right, and you have to have engaging activities. Like I sent you all to the breakout room several times with the same group of people. Now, when you go back to that room for the last time, you're gonna work with the same group of people. Now you're building a bond, right? Now you have another person you can share something with. You might find somebody you have something in common with. It brings joy to the particular class, right? It brings everybody together. These are collaborative learning structures. I use them all the time, right? One student may say to another student, like, hey, I dealt with this. Oh, I dealt with the same thing. And so now you have a connection, right? Now you have a study partner. Now you have a relationship. Engagement is important. Now look, now this is what Professor Davis thinks that I should take and run with. So there's a concept called bibliotherapy. Look it up if you want. And so here's what I did, right? Some children lack the vocabulary to be able to talk about the experiences that they were going through. So as the English and language arts educator, I found books that spoke to each student's particularity. Okay, so for example, Dear Mr. Henshaw by Beverly Cleary. It's about Lee Botts, and Lee's dad is a truck driver, and he and his mom have divorced. And this is about Lee working through all of the grief that comes with the divorce. Profound story. And the way Lee deals with the divorce of his mom and dad is he writes to an author, Mr. Henshaw. Has anybody ever read that book before? No. Okay. Bud Not Buddy. One of my what'd you say? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, it's one person read. Okay, great. The next book, Christopher Paul Curtis, a phenomenal author. I loved his books. Bud Not Buddy. Bud is a young boy. His mom tragically died, and the only thing he has is a bunch of posters about a man that refers to a man, and he sets out to try to find this guy because he doesn't want to be in foster care. It talks about all the negative experiences he had in foster care. Okay, Abraham Lincoln. This particular book by George Sullivan, it details how Abraham Lincoln learned to read late. He couldn't read well. How he lived. He was basically impoverished, and how he worked himself to the president. It talked about how he had bed bugs and a whole bunch of other stuff. And students were fascinated that a president could have such a difficult life and end up on top. Another one of my favorite books is Shelter in Our Car. This is about a mom who is in college. She and her daughter live in the car, and each day she drops her daughter off at school, she studies, and she comes to pick her up every day. And one day, her daughter comes back because the police told her she couldn't park right there, and she's terrified because she can't find her mom. But it portrays the mom as a college student who doesn't have much, but she values education, and she teaches her daughter to value education. I'll go over maybe one or two more. Okay, thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. It's about a teacher who is a fifth grade teacher. He doesn't like bullies. Anybody who tries to bully Patricia, he gets on them, and he teaches her how to read. Everybody in her family can read. She has difficulty reading, but he teaches her how to read. All she has to do is come to school and just try her best, right? And the last one, you can't hardly see it, Sharon Draper. Like Sharon Draper is just good reading. She's just a phenomenal writer. It's called Forged by Fire. It's about a young man. His sister is being abused and how they deal with that abuse, right? So to help students kind of wrestle with their trauma, we read books that I introduced them to characters who were going through similar situations, and they had conversations with the character to help them overcome their particular situation, right? So these are different ways in which you kind of help students understand and overcome their trauma. The next piece is agency. Like you have to give students and individuals opportunity to speak out. I think that's what Olivia was getting at, right? Some people need to have the opportunity to say, this happened and this is what I'm going to do, right? And be celebrated for doing it. You have to give individuals choice, like in the classroom in particular, right? I'm going to give you options. You can choose to do this or you can choose to do that, right? And it makes the classroom a more free place. So just agency. And then like you have to make mistakes. Like you can't be afraid to make mistakes. In our current society, everybody's afraid to make mistakes, but You have to have a plan. You put it in place. You check it. You act. You plan again, right? Because ultimately, what we want are, in my school, the 3 C's: care, connection, communication. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And if you can communicate that care and connect with them, you can cultivate relationships. And if you can leverage relationships, you can help a child express themselves and ask for the help that they need. Okay, I think this is my last slide, because ultimately, this is how we want young people to feel. We want them to feel that they are beautiful, that they are confident, that they can do anything possible, right? So here's the exit ticket. It is 7:54. It is time to go. I'm probably the longest speaker y'all ever had. I apologize. Okay, but here's the question. Oh, nope, not that one. Sorry. And Professor Davis, I don't know if you want them to answer in the chat, and then once they put their answer in there, they can depart, or if you want to send them to the breakout room to answer this question. I think the breakout room may be appropriate, but I'll let you all decide. Won't y'all put in the chat, would you all rather just put your answer in the chat or go back to the breakout room for one final time? Oh, we can do a poll. All right. Let me see if I can do this. Uh-oh. It'll be faster in the chat? Okay, all right. Let's put it in the chat, everybody. I can't see the chat. Oh, I got it. I'm so used to Teams. Okay. All right, we out breakout or breakout. The question is, do you want to go to a breakout room or just write your answer in the chat? Or y'all asleep? Y'all done. Okay, chat, breakout. Chat. All right, chat it is. That's enough. Okay. All right, so pick one question, answer your question, and then once you answer the question, you can peace out. Thank you, class, and thank you, Professor Davis, for an enjoyable couple of hours. I really enjoyed this time. I'm sure I'll see you all soon as I walk past Professor Davis.
And thanks so much for joining us. This is gonna dovetail really well with what we do with Rashida next week. She is a prosecutor who works on cases involving child neglect and abuse, and also works with many children who have witnessed domestic violence in their home. So you've given us that foundation to understand how those children are affected and how it shows up in other areas of their lives. So thank you so much.
I'm looking for my answer though. I'm a teacher at heart, so don't try to get up out of here without an answer. I'm gonna look at everybody's name and ask Professor Davis, y'all. So I need to answer one of these questions. All right, just pick a question. Yeah, I think it's. Can you all see? I think it's up. Yeah. What is one thing that you take away from this learning? Okay, Mary, I see you. How will you apply this learning? What impact you believe? Okay, I see you, Jamie. Okay, Rachel, Cora, Catherine, I see y'all. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Where my guys at? Come on, fellas. In fact, the kids are inherently not bad. That's a good point. Yeah. No problem. Thank you for hearing me. That's the thing. Thank you, Chloe. No problem. Hey, come on, y'all. Some of y'all didn't put the answers in there. Don't play with my emotions. Y'all gonna give me another factor. I still don't see my guys. Come on, guys. Maybe y'all just typing a little bit slower. Come on, fellas. No problem. I'll leave. All right, I'm still missing some responses, people. I'm gonna blow up this chat so I can see more. Hmm. My man Orlando, that's what I'm talking about, brother. Yeah, can spill into other aspects. Yeah, that's a good point, Jamie. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm see you think interdisciplinary, Rachel. Yeah, long-term effects, Catherine. That's absolutely correct. Yeah, good job, Cora. Yeah, being patient with children. Yeah, that is so important. Yeah, everyone's circumstances and lives are different. Yeah, always being patient. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Yep. Don't always know what others are going through. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. No problem. Have a good night.
Have a nice night. You too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Georgiana, not assuming that it's something to do with me. Yeah, because a lot of times it has to do with the other person. That's a good point.
We'll take it personal.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
no problem. Have a good night. I'll continue to keep the implications at the highest. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, y'all did a great job responding. I'm impressed.
Thank you so much.
You have a good night.
You too.
Reading all that, I'm overwhelmed by all these great responses. Yeah. Never know what's going on in the student's life. That is true. To this day, I gotta remember that. Yep. So much more that people don't see. Not the bad kid. So true. Gotta listen. Yeah, yeah. 20 take 20 years off your life. No problem. Curiosity paired with empathy and humility. Yeah, that's a good point, Professor Davis. Oh, I guess we the only two on here, huh? Okay, everybody else bounced. Look, they left right at 8 too.
Yeah, yeah. But this is good though. I'm saving this chat.
Oh, you are?
I'm seeing if it looks like I can.
Oh yeah, you can click file.
Save chat, right?
Let's see. Yeah, you can save it. You can send it right to I can send it to my SharePoint. Let me send it to my SharePoint and see what it says. Oh, look at that. It went straight to my SharePoint. This is hot. I can
So we should propose a class that we could teach together.
Oh Lord. Yeah, that would be cool.
Hmm.
Get a lot more content together. But no, not
You
necessarily.
probably have more than you. I mean, look at you filled up this 2 hours.
Yeah.
And you probably had a lot more stuff you could say.
Yeah, it was like my presentation is hold on, I'm gonna tell you how many slides it is.
But see, as soon as you say Cortez's story like brings it all together.
Yeah, look, this presentation is 129 slides.
Oh hell no.
We got through half of them. No,
you can only get through.
We got through 56.
Yeah, you can get it through about 50 in this class. If you're in with you engaging everybody, it takes a little longer. But it's good though.
But you engaging everybody, it takes so long. Let's get off this and talk.
Okay. Stop recording.